Hi, I'm Randy Retberg, the president of the iGEM Foundation and iGEM Europe, and one of the founders of iGEM. iGEM started almost 20 years ago at MIT with Drew Endy, Tom Knight, Jerry Sussman, Pam Silver, and myself. Started off as a little January project to try out the ideas of synthetic biology. Back when I was young, DNA had barely been invented. So biology meant learning the parts of frogs. But today, it's completely different. It's all about the DNA. As an undergraduate, you learn about DNA, you learn about the machines that manipulate DNA and make proteins and make cells work. This seems so obvious and straightforward that an engineering kind of mind says, this look like machines that we can build things with. And it turns out that's pretty true. All of the people involved were engineers and scientists, but with a strong focus on engineering. I think of myself as an engineer with a strong interest in science because that's what you build the engineering on. So from that and from our background in electronics, we thought about how things are built out of parts and devices and systems. And underneath the parts, that was where the DNA was in the molecules. So using that simple model of parts and devices and systems, we started off to make interchangeable parts. Seems like the natural thing to do came from our background in semiconductors. That idea led to a simple question. Can you build functioning biological systems out of standard interchangeable parts? Or is biology too complicated? In the early days of iGEM, the answer was always biology is too complicated. One thing that iGEM has shown is that in fact you can very often make systems out of standard interchangeable parts and make them work. Now we have to take new steps. We have to make the devices work, and then we have to make the organisms and the systems work. But this basic idea has carried us very far. The intention of iGEM was always to make an industry of synthetic biology, to enable a revolution in becoming good at materials. You can think of the internet and computer revolution as a revolution of being good at information. And in the early days, people thought that was kind of silly. What is information? You know, the world is analog, not digital. You know, we should have everything should be analog. But it's turned out that's not right. The digital world made everything better. So now we have to be good at material, molecules. And that is the important thing in the world right now. It's critical for all of our climate problems, our medical problems, that we get to be good at molecules. And the approach there is, again, it's an engineering style of approach. Build things that do useful things. This is what's underneath most of the projects that I do. Most of the projects involve a team having a dream, a problem to be solved, something that would make the world better where they are, something they see. And then they test that dream out. They test it out in their teams, they test it out in their community, and see what people think. And then they go and they do the scientific engineering work to build a prototype, a proof of example. This is happening to 350 teams this year. And they've all made steps along that. In many cases, they've been very successful. What will come next? Many of the students will go back to school, go back to their classes, find out they have a lot of homework to do, and work very hard. But some of them will turn these projects into their future work, into companies, into master's projects, into PhD projects, and they will get those dreams made into reality. So that's what it's about. What we're talking about is a revolution like the information revolution. It will be very important. We're very small amount of the way into it. We're really about 20 years in. If you think about the internet, 20 years in, there was no browser. The web didn't exist. You could email and file transfer, log in. But those things all came later. There's work to be done, and over the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, there'll be more and more improvements like all revolutions. They always start off small, but they can get to be really big. And that's what's going to happen with synthetic biology during your careers. So the big thing that's happening with iGEM, and the big theme for iGEM, is number one, the development of this field as an engineering kind of a field. But even more, it's the development of an industry. Now, the reason that's different is an industry has to have companies and marketplaces and standardizations of products and specifications through all parts. Our goal, because we're an international activity, because we care about the activities and the opportunities and the people everywhere in the world, is that we intend that iGEM teams be able to enable a world where local people solve local problems everywhere in the world with synthetic biology. There are many, many examples, and you'll see them throughout the iGEM teams this year. This is a very uplifting kind of goal. It's an important goal, it's worthy. iGEM is the beating heart of synthetic biology. It's like a heart, it beats the blood out into all the parts of the world and all the teams and all of the activities. But it's also the heart in the sense of it's where the feelings come from. And in our piece of iGEM, which is the respect and responsibility part, we make sure that we're carrying respect into all parts of the world in everything we do. You have to respect yourself, do things seriously. You have to respect the groups around you, treat them the way they should be treated. Tell them what's going on, listen to them, pay attention. You have to pay respect to the rest of the world as well. The respect is the first part, and then responsibilities, you have to do it right. Everybody had to deal with the questions of safety and security with their projects. They made their safety forms, and then those were reviewed by the Safety Security Committee, and you've heard successes and failures in that. All of these things are important. I'd like to, for this year, make some special points. Number one is the pandemic is still here, and that is just very depressing. Here I am, I'm talking to just two people. The rest of you are all imaginary. I hope you're having fun, but it's been really tough. It's been really tough here. Nemanja and his creative production team has been working like mad to make the videos and get the most recent videos and pictures all put together for the program that you're watching. But COVID even struck here. Everybody's been vaccinated, but one of the members actually came down, had COVID a little bit, also vaccinated, so it wasn't very bad, and everybody else tested negative. The PCR tested negative. So that part is working out well, but it right in the last few days has caused stress and lack of productivity. But I'd like to particularly thank the creative production team, the video editors, the developers, the websites that you're seeing right now and using, all the Zoom rooms, all the facilities that they produce are wonderful. They've had to work really hard, and they really deserve some applause. In addition to the creative production teams, we have a community activity which we call After iGEM, which is focused on the things that you would do with people after they've done their iGEM work. Dorothy runs that part of iGEM, and there are ambassadors all over the world. I think we have about 45, 50 ambassadors and ambassador coordinators, and they've been in contact with you throughout your iGEM experience and helping and producing things that you can do after you're done with the work today. Will has been working on the entrepreneurship side, so if you want to create a company and go get funding and have a big impact in the world through the entrepreneurship path, Will's group has been doing an excellent job in that. You should have been seeing things about that yesterday, Saturday. As before, I mentioned the Respect and Responsibility Committee that Pierce runs, and this is becoming a bigger and bigger part, is going to be showing that the work done in iGEM is of high quality and is done safely and provides a good example for the people in the rest of the world who are trying to figure out how to do synthetic biology well. The new activity there is the topic of how do you take the synthetic biology organisms and use them outside of a contained environment. In the end, the things that we're doing are going to be very important for all the parts of the world, and it's important that we be able to use them in all the parts of the world in a way that is actually safe and understood to be safe. Work to be done there. The other group I'd like to thank a lot is the committees. We have a number of committees and many, many volunteers in the committees that are working on different things, like, for example, the engineering committee, which has done measurement things, and we have many other committees. The next group to thank is judges. We have about 350 judges, and they all had to work. You've talked to many of them. They had to watch your videos and read your wikis and pay attention to all of those things and come up with a resolution of what they understood. In iGEM, we use the idea that it's the job of the teams to convince the judges that the work has been done. And that convincing is not always successful. You may not have managed to convince the judge that you've done what you are quite confident you've done, but in the end, we have to trust the judges. The final group is the teams. I'd like to really thank all of you. It's been work really, really hard. I appreciate that it's been extra hard this year because you couldn't go in the lab. Yet how can you show the work you've done is so good? The project videos, the project promotion videos, the wikis, there's a lot to be done in all of that. We appreciate it a lot because it means that we now have a recording of that content that we can show the world. And it's really important that the world be able to see what you did in your projects. And so we thank you a lot for that. It's also a way for us to try to become new. We're trying to change what we did for 20 years. And so this has been a year of experimentation, trying out. When somebody said, hey, could we do this? I say, yes, over and over and over. Now, some things will have worked out not quite so well or have been more difficult, and we may have to straighten things out. But our intention is a new iGEM. Not the old iGEM, this is the new iGEM. We're looking for next year. And next year, the first thing is we are hoping and developing everything with the expectation that we can have a live in-person event in Paris at the big convention center. We're talking to lots of friends and other groups that we can invite to have their events in our space during the iGEM time. I'm hoping that we will have maybe somewhere in the 8,000 people participating. Half and more will be the iGEMers themselves. We expect to have about 420 teams, which should get us about 4,000 to 4,500 team participants, about 400 judges probably. But we are going to bring in a lot of other groups. For example, Pierce is going to be bringing in groups that are experts in governance and policy from a lot of the different organizations around the world that do that and who care about the things we do in iGEM. We're also going to be working on the infrastructure. We've already started that. The wiki pages you saw on jamboree.igem.org were not on MediaWiki. They were all in the new environment, which is a GitLab environment. So every team next year is going to have project space in our version of GitLab, and they'll be able to do their wiki development in a much more modern and better environment. I'm hoping that by the end of January into February, March, we'll have moved everything that is the iGEM pages and all the past iGEM teams off of MediaWiki and entirely into a cloud-based GitLab environment. We're also going to work on moving the registry in a similar way. Every part should be like a software project and should be having all of the tools that the programmers are used to in that kind of an environment. So a lot has happened this year. Thank you very much. I hope you have enjoyed it. And a lot is coming next year. So thank you very much.